When did we decide that love is not enough? When did we decide that Jesus is wrong and something more than loving one another as God loves us is required to function in this world? If we look into the history of Christianity alone, it didn't take very long for Jesus' own followers to give up on the sufficiency of love. The Apostle Paul notoriously adds laundry lists of moral requirements. Other writers in the New Testament pile on with definitions of what one's faith must look like to be worthy of being called a Christian, more than loving one another. And soon after Christians acquired social power in the Roman Empire, love was thrown out the window for the sake of violence, manipulation, and greed that maintained the institutional power of the church. And despite attempts by the Protestant reformers to bring the church back to its loving, grace-filled roots, the Reformation rapidly devolved into infighting, competition, rigid divides, carried out through requirements and restrictions that defined what one had to do to be worthy of God's love and to successfully carry out God's love. And so we arrive in the modern day where the love of God is functionally irrelevant in both our global conversations and in our local decision-makings. Money, power, and the monopolies of violence are now what define our ethics, the question of what we are to do in this world. How often during the average day does anyone ask themselves how to best love one another as God has loved you, instead of making decisions based on obligation, outcome, or profits? We have, as a world, collectively decided that love is not enough. And the new commandment Jesus gives is insufficient in a complex, dangerous, and competitive modern world. You know what? To illustrate my point, a sermon isn't enough. We got to go back to confirmation class. It is Confirmation Sunday, so we're going to do one more confirmation class, and this one's going to be on ethics of Western philosophy, influenced by Christianity. Can I have some volunteers come up and help me demonstrate? There are three major strains of ethical thought in Western philosophy as influenced by Christianity. The first one is called, does anyone know it? Deontology. All right, deontology is kind of the laws, or it's the ethical system of universal laws of goodness. Essentially, you're only allowed to make the decisions that you can will all of humanity to decide. So Reese, I'd like you to, just using your body here, kind of like give us an impression of what the law looks like. Oh, wow, okay. Wow, nice, okay, good work. I was hoping for more of a freeze frame tableau kind of thing. But that's pretty good. That's pretty, you know what? That's good. Here, you freeze frame kind of do like, I don't know, like that, yeah, honestly though, right. All right, so the law, as we just saw, right? Force. So in deontology, murder is wrong because you don't want everyone to murder. Lying is wrong because you want people to tell the truth. So through these absolute moral laws, the hope is that humans will learn to love. Universal laws can lead to love, correct humanity's mistakes. And this is often the argument that people like the Apostle Paul make, who seek to provide clear moral laws for Christians to follow, to keep their sin in check, and then they will learn how to practice love. Now, again, I want you to go like, yeah, there we go. And just, freeze in that position. Awesome. The only problem with deontology is that life is a lot more complex, more morally gray than clear moral laws can allow. For instance, self-defense. Another example would be whether lying is permitted to protect someone being persecuted by ICE agents. Love is more than a negative act. No, you got to hold this. You didn't realize that when you volunteered. Yeah, you should have been more concerned about that. Now, I'm sorry, it's the law. Oh, see, when we hide love behind laws, we restrict love to obligations, thou shalt nots and thou shalts. And we have to enforce those through force. We put limits around what love can be, when the reality is that love is more than a negative act. Love is not only accomplished through laws that say thou shalt not. Love is positive, proactive, and creative. Sometimes love is unreasonable and novel. So, okay, Reese, you can go back and sit down. So let's move on to the second ethical philosophy, which is known as consequentialism or utilitarianism. And it's summed up by the saying that the ends justify the means. It's about the ethics of outcomes that tries to find the outcome of love. So basically, instead of searching for universal laws that will lead to love, you focus on the outcome of love. And anything you do that leads to the outcome of love is good, is what's justified. So William, I would like you to, when I say the phrase, this is like improv class, when I say the phrase, the ends justify the means, how would you act that out? In the freeze frame position, please don't arrest me again. The ends justify the means. Yeah, that's kind of a hard one. Or the outcome of love. Or maybe work, the kind of work that you do that would lead to love. Think about it for a while, and when you decide on something, I want you to kind of put it into action. All right? So, consequences of your actions. So if your actions lead to the outcomes of love and happiness greater than the harm that they cause, then those actions are good and loving. Many of the letters of the New Testament suggest a consequentialist take on ethics. There we go. I like that. Good vibes. Have we all seen the picture of the thumbs up Jesus? That's like thumbs up, like the smiling Jesus that's winking at you. It's a little weird. But yeah, thumbs up Jesus. That's good. Oh, keep it up. Again, no, if I made Reese stand like that for a solid 3 minutes, you got to do that too. So, a lot of the writers of the New Testament will take a consequentialist take on ethics, namely the Apostle James, who famously or infamously wrote that faith without works is dead, suggesting that it is not enough to believe in love without carrying out the actions that lead to love. The outcome of love is what's most important. The problem with this theory is that it fails to acknowledge the ambiguity of love. If a global war will result in more people feeling loved eventually 300 years from now, then it is worth all the death and destruction it will cause. And in this ethical framework that can lead people to it's this ethical framework that can lead people to do harm to others in the name of loving them by turning them into an easier kind of person to be loved. The one that comes to my mind is the abomination of conversion therapy. So, William, with that, you can go and sit down. We've tossed out consequentialism, we've tossed out deontology. We're solving philosophy today, people. So let's turn to the third ethical framework that's had a resurgence in the past decade, and it's called virtue ethics. Its catchphrase is moderation. Everything in moderation. You know what's coming. Can you please demonstrate moderation? Ooh, very nice. Very nice acting. Excellent. So, moderation, instead of making decisions based on whether they are good or bad according to laws or outcomes, virtue ethics directs us to look at our qualities, the spectrum of our characters. For instance, the spectrum of bravery to fear, generosity to frugality, responsibility to relaxation, and encourages us to make choices that will lead us into the middle of these spectrums that's right for us and will allow us to best love one another. So for instance, you don't always have to be brave and rush into danger, risking your life, because sometimes the best way to show love is to be appropriately afraid and cautious. And by developing each of your virtues, each element of your character, you will then learn how to love. You will love naturally according to your character. Oh, very nice. That's a good hide. You brought excellence. What is a child but not a prop? Anyway, so where was I here? I lost my spot. Yes, so this is a compelling idea for ethics that especially appears to our more individualistic modern culture and is supported by certain interpretations of the sayings of Jesus, such as the golden rule that implores us to treat others as we would like to be treated. And trust that as we practice treating each other as we would like to be treated, we will become better at loving all of our neighbors. I'll be honest, I like virtue ethics, but I find that it has a major drawback in the way that it fails to account for the extreme nature of love that comes from the God of the cross. For Jesus did not tell us to love one another as we are uniquely positioned to love. Jesus told us to love one another as Jesus has loved us. And his expression of love led him to die for the sake of all humanity and creation, and trust in the life of God to deliver him to resurrection. Virtue ethics is practical, but love is not practical. Love is ridiculous, terrifying, and sacrificial. You can go ahead and sit down, Laura. Give snaps for our volunteers. They had no idea what they were getting into. So, thank you for coming to this final confirmation class on ethics, deontology, consequentialism, and virtue ethics, and how they all fail to guide humans towards a consistent practice of love that doesn't require love to be sacrificed on the altar of pragmatism and survival. Because love is not a law. Love is a living thing. Love is life itself. To exist is to need love and to show love, and trying to legalize love is like trying to legalize breathing. The more that you do it, the more difficult you will make it. Neither is love an outcome. It is an expression of who we are. Love is past and present and future. It is Alpha and Omega, beginning and end of everything that we do, have done, and will do. It cannot be deferred to a future outcome because new ways of loving appear before you every moment and have always been there. But love is not a practice either. Love is a purpose. We are on this earth to love and do nothing else. Love is not something we need to accomplish through a rigorous training program. Love is not diet culture. Love is who we are. Love is why we have been made. Love is already perfectly placed inside and around us all. Love has already given us everything we need to survive upon nothing more than love. No, the only Western philosophers who have even come close to expressing an ethic of love consistent with Jesus were a quartet of people named John, Paul, George, and Ringo when they declared that all you need is love, and love is all you need. The only challenge to Jesus' definition of love, the only reason we are so resistant to trusting in the sufficiency of love, is that love, when trusted wholly and fully, leads us to many places we would rather not go, and to do things that we would rather not do. Because trusting in the sufficiency of love means giving up on the many ways our society teaches us to hate and maintain separation. Truthfully, and I say this with a heavy heart because I love philosophy, but every ethical framework it's devised is merely a way to justify separation, preserve appropriate hatred, permit the necessary apathy under the guise of working towards love and goodness, and honestly, I call BS. Real love makes no exceptions. Real love has no use for hatred. Real love has no time for apathy. Real love steers into the complexity and ambiguity of human existence with the powerful proclamation that everything we need to do in this world can be done through love and to love, and all we have to do is sacrifice our control over the world, hang up our hatred, and learn to embrace the world as God embraces us. For Jesus tells us to love one another as Jesus has loved us. And the conclusion to Revelation shows us how God loves us. Closeness, intimacy, passion. God comes to live with us and among us here on the earth, right next to us. God marries us. God wipes away all tears. God's love for us overcomes death. God births a new world with us through our mutual love. God nourishes this new world with the abundant water of life, of which there is enough for all. Our society of power and privilege, maintained through separation, hatred, and violence, wants you to believe that these words are mere metaphors. Nice thoughts, but not realistic, not practical. Love, by the definitions of society, must always be restricted to what is practical, what is universifiable, what is written in the law. But this is the opposite of what Jesus declares, which is that all you need really is love. The love that chooses closeness over separation. The love that chooses to care even when it is painful. The love that chooses to love difference instead of forcing sameness. The love that chooses to risk everything upon the belief that there is enough for everyone in this world. And to be very clear, I don't believe that Jesus tells us that trusting in the sufficient, let me try that again. To be very clear, unlike what I just was, I do believe that Jesus tells us that trusting in the sufficiency of love means giving up the idea that there are people in this world that we are allowed to hate, even if they really and truly deserve it. And I am not saying that justice should not be done. I am not saying that you must immediately forgive the people who have hurt you and who have power over you. God knows that I have not done that. But I am saying that Jesus declares that the new world where pain and sorrow are no more begins when we take all the energy we spend on finding the appropriate ways to hate and give that energy to the work of loving and serving every neighbor around us with the same passion and intimacy with which Jesus loved us. Which brings me to confirmation. I know, weird. We've gone a lot of different places in this sermon. Confirmation is the affirmation of baptism, and we have 5 confirmands who are ready to affirm and confirm that they are called to love, that they share the purpose of the church of God, called to love the world as Jesus loved us. Through study, they have learned how to discern the work of love in a complex world. Through questions and conversations, they have become co-creators with God, devising new ways of loving in the world. Through faith expressions that they will share in just a few minutes, they will reveal how God has called them to live out their God-given call to love and affirm the belovedness of their bodies, minds, souls, and spirits. And I confirm to you all that they are better at sharing the love of God than I am, than any of us are. They are ready to be and become the church, a church that courageously loves a new world into being, not through laws, obligations, outcomes, or ethics, but through the simplicity of trusting that loving one another is all we need. The question is whether we as a church will rise to this challenge that they give to us, to give up our attachments to hatred and scarcity and separation and join in their confirmation that Jesus has called us to trust in the sufficiency of love. Because you will have opportunities as a church, immediate opportunities to discern how to do this in the coming years, through the decisions that you will make about this building, about our connections with other churches and other faiths in this world, through our commitment to environmental justice, through our commitment to justice for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and beyond people, through our commitment to nourish our neighbors right now, through our conviction to love in a world that teaches us the path of separation. We exist as a church together, to be guided by the generations coming before us, reminding us through their affirmation of faith that all we need is to remember that existence is love. So when did we decide that love is not enough? When did the church decide that love was not a sufficient purpose? I don't know. I also don't care. Because I know that today, we can decide that love is enough, and that it is enough to love one another as God loves us.